Isaiah says, how to answer what are your weaknesses? Oh, here we go. I did a video. I've got 2 videos, I think, on what are your weaknesses, like how to answer that question. I got a short video and I got a long video. The long video, it talks about every possible answer, where they say like, what are your weaknesses? And you say chocolate, right? Kryptonite, or, I just care too much, or I work too hard, or I'm just too awesome. It's intimidating for everybody else. Like all these sort of silly kiss off answers that, if you're trying to get hired at McDonald's or something, I'm sure those would work, but anything above, recruiters, some recruiters might be stupid, but I don't think many are that stupid. Saying a strength is a weakness, it's like, heard it, Generally, the problem is people don't ask the question for you to deflect it, right? So you have to give them like, a seemingly legitimate, valid answer. But the trick is that you don't actually reveal any real weaknesses, because the recruiters, they love to advise people and say like, just be honest. Just say your biggest weakness and then tell us how you're working on it, And that way we know that you recognize that you have weaknesses and you are working on it and you are humble enough to realize you need to work on it. BS through and through. It's self-serving propaganda. Because what usually happens is they ask you, what's your greatest weakness? And you tell them. Excuse me. And then your big reward is they eliminate you for having that weakness. Because the other candidates didn't give a weakness when they were asked. You did, so you lose, right? That's practically how that stuff works out. So to make a long story short, here's what I recommend. Okay? Think of a trade-off. Think of something good that has a trade-off, right? For example, a very common one is to say like, I do very good quality work, right? I don't cut corners. But what would be the trade-off? The trade-off, like a negative trade-off of that? Well, the problem is I'm not the fastest worker, right? Other people, they cut corners, they do it really fast, but it's not very good. They make a lot of mistakes. I don't do that. I do high quality work, but the trade-off is that I'm not the fastest worker, right? So like speed versus quality, they kind of go like this. You could either have very, very fast, you could have very, very good quality, but you usually don't get both together, right? What's another one? You're very easy to get along with, everybody loves you, but when it comes to, sometimes your weakness can be you don't give honest feedback when it's negative, right? You ingratiate, you say something that's nice, but it's not honest, right? So honesty versus preserving great personal relationships, something like that, right? Like if you thought about this for a moment, you could probably think of several of these, right? So when they ask you, what's your weakness or what's your greatest weakness? Give them an understandable side effect of something that you do that's awesome, okay? You could say, well, I'm not the fastest worker. Other people do complete their work faster than me. However, I produce like really good quality work. So the way I would phrase it is I would lead with the good thing. You'd say like, well, I produce work to a very, very high standard. And then the classic sort of line that I give is, but unfortunately not everybody shares that standard. So other people can sometimes complete work faster than me because they're cutting corners and doing other things. So I'm not the fastest worker, but I do the best quality work of all the workers in my work group, something like that, right? So you're giving like a strength and a weakness. You're giving an understandable side effect of something you do that's awesome, right? I do very good quality work, but that unfortunately means I'm not the first one done. That's maybe how you would phrase it if you could put a bit of thought into this instead of what I'm doing right now, which is just blabbing off the top of my head. And then if you really want to knock it out of the park and have an amazing answer, Then you say something, you tack something on at the end. You say, this is what I do to make sure that that weakness is never a problem. Okay, so for example, like, okay, I'm not the fastest worker, but what I found is that if I talk to the boss, when the boss assigns me a job, at that moment, I say to the boss, well, okay, here's my estimate of when I'm going to be able to finish. Is that okay? And 95% of the time, the boss will say, sure. So even though I take a little bit of extra time to do it, I'm never late, and it never causes any kind of disruption on the job. You know, something like that. So you give 2 strengths, 2 things you do that are awesome, and a legitimate weakness, but they can't fault you on the weakness because it's simply a side effect of something you do that's amazing, right? So you use the question, you wriggled out of the trap, you use the question to say 2 awesome things about you, right? And not give a real weakness that they can use it to eliminate you. That's how you answer that question. There's a lot more to it, but that's kind of the short version.